Y'all know what it is. It's your man Hakeem Green. Channel live and direct. BDP, all day, every day. All we do, spark mad ism. Y'all know what it is about the ism. We spark mad ism over here, but we also spark mad wisdom just as well. So I make it a point to bring on folks that's gonna bring them jewels, those gems. Speaking of jewels and gems, y'all saw what it was, right? The mad ism, right? Speaking of jewels and gems, you know how we do every week. I like to set the cipher off with something to give us a chance to invite, like, subscribe. We definitely want to bring people into this conversation. We want as many viewers, friends, family, because our guest tonight, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, he's dropping jewels. It's one of my OGs, one of my big bros, one of the folks I tap into to get the jewelry when I need to. You know what I mean? Jewelry. We're going to rock out. I'm going to play jewelry. Let's like, subscribe, invite folks to the conversation. What up, Izzy? I see you out there. I'll be in Connecticut soon to get a plate, my brother. Yes. You best believe I'm coming to get a plate, Izzy. Chef Izzy in the building. All right, that said, let's hop on over to jewelry. Let's drop some jewels on them. Yeah, this goes out to every old head took the time to drop a jewel on me. You know what I mean? Little bits of wisdom. Yo, check it out. Listen. If pimpin' ain't easy, what the fuck is revolution? Rappers be spitting straight noise pollution. Here's a clean glass of wood, I show you how to eat the lid. What goes around comes, let me show you how to give. That's something that you hear when an honest at your ribs. In the street, you fuck your jewels, thug drool like baby bibs. I try to stay mindful, write something for the kids. Talking like I walk it, rap it how I live. I came up blue collar, strive to be a scholar, but I couldn't eat the love, I only starve without the dollar. Depression, the stress is enough to make you holler when the landlord's at your doorstep. The devil's on your collar. It's all like jewels. Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Yeah. Said y'all like jewels. Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Yeah. They call me a slacker, cause I won't sell crack for the cracker. I call women queens and I love the berry blacker. Some chicks get it twisted, they'd rather be called bitches with their ass in the air like everybody's supposed to kiss it. It's a simple lesson, you get what you deserve. Is life a bitch or just a pimp with a perm? See mommy tricked out, made a little heartburn. It's something she'll forget when it's time to take her turn. When will the children learn this was better to earn? But when my niggas put in work, they like to make the metal burn. End up in the system, it's all systematic. Maturing candidates, waving automatics. A product of a project launched in the 80s. Chemical warfare meant to kill the crack babies. Now as the world turns, is it just a story? Cause keeping it real got my sons in purgatory. It's all like jewels. Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Yeah. It's all like jewels. Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Yeah. In between heaven and Hades, like earthquakes in Haiti, the fat lady clears her throat and then plays harp for the babies. They say I'm such a mystic, lyrics are mythic, but I make it so plain with details and specifics. I'm just gifted like that. I'm young and I'm black, so represent the game. I represent the fact that God helps those who helps themselves. So when God helps you, He's really helping Himself. Make every day have purpose. It's the science of life. Every breath's another role. It's a science to dice. Give me the moment. Learn from your mistakes. Try to learn from others. You get one roll at life, you won't get another. You have to learn the tricks. Cause some niggas be on the gab. Want some funny business, but that shit will make you laugh. I thought he had the bread, wasn't wonder not the weed. I'm wondering how it's coming back, cause my connect ain't getting beat. Said y'all like jewels. Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Yeah. Said y'all like jewels. Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Can I drop a jewel? Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that was jewelry by Hakeem Green, produced by Ron Lawrence, video by Nice Flicks. Big shout out to everybody involved with the project. It's off the upcoming LP. Aubrey should be dropping sometime this spring, maybe early summer. We're trying to get it right now. What up, cuz? Zubin's in the house. Big shout out to everybody that's in the chat, in the comment section. And our next guest, our special guest, brother KABA HIAWATHA KAMENE, educator, professor, historian, a musician, artist, bunch of different things. But most importantly, our brother. Yes, sir. Peace, elder.
Peace to you, my brother Hakeem.
All
Thank
right.
you for the invitation, man. Can we drop some jewels?
I hope so. We definitely gonna drop some jewels tonight. That's without a doubt. For sure,
No
for
doubt.
sure.
No doubt.
When I invited you to the Madism show, I saw that I guess you didn't know who I was, or you didn't really remember where you knew me from. The first time I met you was probably in the late 90s at a recording studio, and you were with your children at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, this is sometimes late 90s, early 2G, early 2000s. And then there was like an explosion of consciousness around 2002, 2003, 2004 up in Harlem, 125th Street, Brooklyn, tri-state area. And I would make my rounds to various lectures, and I got to see your face, and I'm purchasing DVDs and I'm seeing your face. And then, I would run into you from time to time, and we'd always build, and you would drop some jewels on me and leave me like scratching my head, like, man, I got to research. I got to catch up, And then, with this wonderful thing we have called the internet, I'm seeing you more and more kind of filter this information out to the masses. Of course, I saw you on Hidden Colors 1, 2, 3, 4. Big shout out to Tariq, Nasheed. And, it's just always amazing when I get to, sit at the foot of the elders who's feeding us some nutritious, food, and, that would be yourself. Now, Madism, I don't know if you're familiar with Madism.
Talk to me about it, brother.
Mad means a lot. Ism means pot. We go keep it moving means we won't ever stop. So Madism is a hit record I put out with KRS-One back in 94, 95. It was one of the really first big major weed songs that went commercial. And then in I was a school teacher before the music thing going on. So when we decided to put out Madism, we had to make it connect to something much deeper than weed. So ism for us became racism, sexism, fascism, communism, totalitarianism, all the different isms, ism schisms. Big shout out to Last Poets. All the different ism schisms that got us kind of, messed up. And so I branded Madism to mean much more than just weed. And we've been doing this talk show for the last few years, and that's what Madism is all about. So I just wanted to give you the heads up.
Okay, bro.
Now, and then when we spoke about this particular show, where you asked me, what do we want to talk about? And there's so many things that I really want to pick your brain on. But ultimately, I wanted to hopefully reconcile differences between different factions of thought. Our people tend to be fractured. And then, when you follow certain folks and groups, they're able to put the fractures together and show the cohesiveness in our culture. So with that said, I always like to start from the beginning. When I say the beginning, the root of all things, the root of humanity, our origins, and in how we grow from that beginning to become the people we've become over the millennia. So that said, where can we find our origins? Some people say our origins are here in America. Some people say our origins are in Africa. Some people say that the human family has no one place of origin. I'm trying to reconcile those different ideas.
In terms of the science, brother Hakeem, and to the family that's on board, when you go back into science, and when science means knowledge, comes from the word scient, which means knowledge. And I know that when we use the word science, a lot of us think in terms of biology and physics and astronomy and oceanography. And while they are part of science, the word science means knowledge in general. All the subject areas, all the things that we can learn is science. And I've always tried to relate back to science and not the personal or the emotional. It's not that I got a problem with emotion, because to me, there's two types of emotion. Emotion out of control is anger. Emotion in control is called passion. We're very passionate about what we do, but we're not angry. And I'm glad that you spoke about bringing various groups together, because that's what my name means. When I was correcting my name and I went to the shamans, I went to my elders to ask them how to approach it. They told me, don't pick a name that describes who you are. Pick a name that will remind you of what your divine destiny is. In other words, a name should not be a noun. It should be a verb. And so my name, KABA, is spirit of the soul. Hiawatha is the indigenous brother who united the 5 nations.
Indigenous to Americas, you're talking.
Yes, in terms of who the French misnomered the Iroquois or the Iroquois.
We're gonna get into
They
it.
call themselves the Haudenosaunee. And Hiawatha was a dreamer who in around 1000 AD saw that there was a lot of fighting going on amongst the 5 nations. They are located in northern United States, southern Canada, right along the they stretched across the border. There was no Canada and United States at this time, so there was just one landmass.
Yeah.
And Hiawatha, and I often do this I often tell this story when I'm talking to street organizations. Some people call them gangs. I don't call them gangs. I call them street organizations.
Yeah.
Because when you stop and think about it, the police are a gang.
That's right.
The fire department is a gang. In fact, 2 of the biggest gangs in America is the Demo Crips and the Republicans. I don't want to go that deep. No disrespect to my Bloods and Crips.
Right. That's right. It's red and blue.
You know what I'm saying? Well, that's what it is.
red and blue.
Okay, and that's science, brother. And so Hiawatha brought the 5 groups: the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Seneca, the Mohawk, and the Cayuga. He brought them together onto the Onondaga territory. And he said, look, we are killing each other. We're all brothers and sisters, but we're killing each other. And he said, let me tell you, he was known as the dreamer. He said, in my dream, I saw a force that's going to come at us, that we're going to have to be united if we're going to defeat this force. This is 1000 AD now, 492 years before 1492. And so Hiawatha was able to, he brought the people who had lost the most family members. And he brought the community around to watch. And he lifted up a bush. And he had all of the leading members of the 5 nations put their hatchet in the hole. And then he placed the bush back over it. And that's where we get the proverb about burying the hatchet. That once you bury the hatchet, there's war no more. And so that symbolized the unification of these 5 nations. Hiawatha is my middle name. Kamene. Ka is spirit, and Mene is the first Nesebiti or pharaoh that united Upper and Lower Kemet. Shmatawi. And so when you look at the name that I developed, whenever anybody calls my name, they say, hey, brother KABA, hey, KABA. You're not calling me who I am. you're reminding me of what my divine purpose is, and that is to unify our people.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Everywhere I study our history, Brother Hakeem, from Kemet to the Moors, to the plantation, to the civil and human rights era of the 60s and the 70s, 50s, even to this very day on the streets that we walk. I've never seen a culture outside of us be able to come in and defeat us. I've always seen them come in and exploit the fact that we're fighting amongst ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing we have to do is stop fighting amongst ourselves.
Yes, sir.
Malcolm X told us they don't kill you because you're Republican or Democrat or Christian or Muslim or Jew. They kill you because you're black.
Okay, I'm glad you said that, because there's conflict, division over that very word, black.
Yeah.
And whether we should call ourselves black, and black is not a nationality, and black is an adjective, and black is a created fiction that the powers that be use to keep us in second and third class citizenship. And I understand, I can get but when I say blackness myself, I'm relating to the universal blackness out of which all things come.
Yes.
So with that said, blackness and how it relates to us as original people and our origins.
Everything that you said is correct. It's an adjective. It demands a lowercase letter if you're going to write it right. And I understand all that. But Brother Hakeem and family, I ain't got time for such superficial argument. You a Hebrew Israelite, you a Negro, you even I'm not going to say it, but okay. You black, whatever you call yourself, as long as you know when I'm looking in your eyes, I'm talking to you. I don't care what you call yourself. I'm with it all. I don't care what you call yourself. My thing is, we're fighting. This is what I mean when I say we're fighting over superficial stuff. We're fighting over distraction. Okay, so you don't want to be called black. What do you want? Call me aMoor. Okay, you Moor. I'll call you Moor for the rest of my life.
Now, I've heard presentations from you where you say the word Moor means black, essentially.
Yes, but the word was adapted to mean black. Okay. But the word itself comes from mer, M-R, the sound, mr. Yeah. Okay? And so in that sound, mer is it's hard to explain from the African perspective because we speak in metaphor. That's what I like about rap. It's all metaphor. And so when you use the word mer, the closest that we come to a word similar that we use in English is agape. It is the highest form of love. And it is the love that not only makes you feel good, it's the kind of love that makes you hurt. But despite the hurt, you still love. Mer. And that's what we called ourselves. One of the challenges we have is that Africans speak through sounds. The Indo-European or the European and Asian have attached too much importance to the symbols of sounds. In other words, they're deep inside A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But when you get into an African framework of looking at language, it's a matter of communication. And so the first teacher for the human family, who, by the way, were the Twa people from Africa, life came from Africa. And I'll say this a couple more times if we need to talk about this. Life came from Africa. And it came because of the laws of biology and climatology. I'm going by the science. I'm going by my research.
Now, when you say that biology and climatology,
yes,
for why is that? I know I'm asking for the folks in the building.
There are laws in science: Glosier's law, Bergman's law, and Allen's law. These three laws deal with what happens when a body, let's just use humanity, when a body comes in contact with the heat of the sun. Glosier's law says that in order for life to exist, it has to come from a warm, temperate, tropical climate. The evidence of it is right now. When we come up on Sunday,
life,
New Year, Happy New Year, because to the ancestors, to those that clocked the original calendar, March 20th really was New Year.
Yeah.
Because spring, because life comes into existence. And so when you're dealing with the temperate zone, in order to exist and live, life comes out of thermonuclear reaction and life goes away in the cold. And the evidence of it is in New York. It's in the places where we experience winter. When it gets cold, everything die. When it gets warm, everything come back to life. Now, the key is, I also recognize the great scholarship of Dr. David Imhotep, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and others who have spoken about the concept of, well, Dr. David Imhotep's work brings Africans to America somewhere between 120 and 100,000 years ago. And there's a very good chance that the first Africans that came to America did not come via the east like the Bering Strait. They came from Africa, particularly the Benguela Current in the southern part of Africa, which would have been the Khoisan people, who were the brothers and sisters of the Twa Mbuti of Central Africa. And chances are they would have rid that Benguela Current into the mouth of the Amazon River. And chances are the first Africans that came to America came to South America, specifically Brazil. We find so many artifacts that date back. We find bones in San Diego, California, Brother Hakeem, of a woman, a black woman, 90,000 years old. So, see, I'm saying that we're arguing over superficial concepts. Whether you want to think that life could arise in America, scientifically, brother, that just don't hold water for me. And somebody's going to have to come with more than just emotion and prove to me that an organism can evolve itself monogenetically, meaning one mono gene. Okay, to me, I look at the work of Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, where he talks in civilizational barbarism, where he takes you through the Australopithecus robustus, the Australopithecus gracile. These are the forms of the human family. The very first one that came out of the what would be considered the primate, because, you know, we have ancestors, and many of them remained in the trees. They're called pongids. And the ones that came down and walked on the land are called hominids. The ones that were hominids would evolve into the apes and or gorillas and the chimpanzees and the orangutans and things like that. The hominids would go through a process that would lead to us as Homo sapiens sapiens. Australopithecus robustus, a robust human, very thick, still leaning over, with many attributes and characteristics of apes. Then the very best of robustus became Australopithecus gracile, a slenderer, a thinner human being, less thick. And the very best of them started to create tools. They became Homo habilis. Homo habilis began to think on a much higher level through tools, because their hands were freed up and they were able to create civilizations. Yeah, that opposable thumb is very important to the human being. And so being able to make tools, they began to eat better, When they started to eat better, they started to think better. When they started to think better, they started to eat better, and they evolved into who we call Homo erectus. They stood up straight.
Yeah. Now, between habilis and erectus, what stage, how long ago were the 50, 60,000, 150,000, 300,000 years ago when we start to see the appearance of habilis and erectus?
I'm afraid to give dates, brother, because not until we have our future shake unto Jobs and our future scholars, because as long as it's coming from Europeans, they have, it's like studying your family history, but you have no idea who your family is. As Black folk, it's a little bit different. We know, we have it in our DNA to understand. But to answer your question, I would push that date, give or take, somewhere. It's hard, but let's just push it back 1,000,000 years.
Okay. Yeah.
It's chronology that I focus on.
Okay. The reason why I asked about dates is because when I hear conversations about different human advancements, and credit is taken away from the African, and we skip thousands of years, and it's just like, they're so disrespectful to think that human beings were on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years and didn't think of a wheel, or didn't think of building shelter, or didn't think of agriculture, or didn't think of where we were in terms of the stars and so we were just here for hundreds of thousands of years just doing nothing until somebody else from Asia came to Egypt and then did in Africa what Africans couldn't do for themselves. It's just so disrespectful. And that's why I think I agree with you about chronology is the most important, not getting caught up in exact times, because until the next Sheikh Anta Diop comes, who's to say? But for us to know that, we've been conscious, sentient beings for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, I think is very important.
Absolutely. There's no question. And the other piece that is very intriguing is the accomplishments of our ancestors and what they were able to achieve. And so that becomes very important also, to be able to understand the level of achievement as it relates to our people and what we've achieved. I'm going back 1,000,000 years. If you go back to Australopithecus, robustus, they once had it at like 3.5 million. But then all of a sudden they found Ardipithecus, and Ardipithecus pushed the human family back 4.5 million years.
Wow.
And I'm saying to us right now, do the best you can with what you got, but be capable of pushing those dates back maybe 100 million years. We don't know. And I'm not going by the people that are telling me this story, because these individuals have no idea the accomplishments of the African people. And those that might even have a hint ain't going to tell you, because why are they going to tell us how powerful we really are and how powerless they have been? Just as an example, Brother Hakeem, the Indo-European people, and when I say that, I'm talking about European and Asian. If you go back into the ancient world, you're looking at the Grimaldi, who is the African, and the Cro-Magnon of Europe, who mutated out of the Grimaldi that went to Europe.
Okay. Gotta stop you there. When we talk about the Grimaldi, we're talking about the original inhabitants of Western Europe.
True? The planet.
Of the planet. Okay, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Right now I'm talking about Europe, though.
Right. Okay.
But you're right. But the Grimaldi is that individual that went into Europe as Homo sapiens sapien. And over thousands of years, maybe 30,000 years, they mutated into the people we today call the European or the Eurasian. But they were called and classified, they were called Cro-Magnon.
Would that be right? Still African, but a different type of African.
But they have been depigmented.
Okay.
Their nose. You see, remember Allen's and Bergman's law. There are laws that have to do with your morphology or what happens to your limbs, to your body in the cold. There are things that happen as it relates to your body mass when you're in the cold. And the only thing for people who have experienced the different seasons, you know how your body roll in the wintertime. In the wintertime, even the curliest hair gets straighter. Even the most melanated person loses a couple of shades. And your bone formation, like sometimes in the cold weather, real bitter cold, you hunch up your body. But if you're living in that kind of weather for a long period of time, your body's going to transform into what you're looking like, which is a hunched body. So your body form is going to change. This is science. And the complexion that we are right now, the melanation that we are right now on this date in March is not going to be how we look on August 15th.
I'm in Florida, and it's countdown to pool time, so I get a tan.
Okay.
Yeah, and I feel better.
That's right. And people of European descent have kinky hair too. They have nappy hair, but in the summertime they call it frizzy hair. But frizzy hair is kinky hair. But they don't want to call it kinky, so they call it frizzy. And then they've got products that they use to take the frizz out. And what is it called? Frizz out. This is science. This is not superiority or inferiority. I don't go that route because I believe what Dr. King said was correct, that it is the content of your character that describes who you are, the content of your character, not the complexion of your skin or anything else. It just so happens that amongst certain people, there are large groups of people that act in a most uncivilized manner.
Well, in terms of the development of the human species in that part of the world at that time in history, the cold, the environment is your enemy. Listening to Dr. John Henry Clark, Europe was land poor, people poor, resource poor. The competitive nature of fighting against the next man, woman, child, family, tribe for food, competing against the animals for food, breeds a certain character. The harsh climate, the cold climate. You're talking about the ice ages. You're talking about not New York City in the winter. You're talking about a real harsh environment and what that could possibly do to the psychology of a group of people coming out of that.
Your skin and your brain are very similar. There's a brother, Dr. T. Owens Moore, written a number of books on the science of melanin. And what he basically is saying is that in your body, you have organs and you have glands. You have a lot of other things, but organs and glands. Organs do work. That's your heart is an organ. Your brain is an organ. It does work for you. Glands secrete liquids. That's what they do. The human body is a phenomenal piece of work. Glands and organs. Organs work, glands secrete liquids. Your skin and your brain are very similar in that they are the only two entities in your body that are both an organ and a gland. Your skin is the largest organ on your body. It also
secretes,
sebaceous glands, sweat glands, eccrine glands. See, Brother Hakeem, we got to get science with this. See, this is why people don't invite me places. Because I don't get emotional with this information. I can shut a room down on science alone.
Knowledge.
Your brain is an organ. It works. It thinks for you. But it also secretes liquids like melatonin, serotonin, cerebrospinal fluid. So your brain and your skin are very much alike. So when you take a melanated organism and put them in an ice age where degrees would go down so far as maybe 200 to maybe 400 degrees below zero. So when you say it ain't New York cold, it ain't even Chicago Windy City cold.
No.
Okay, you are talking about a condition in the Arctic, the 51st parallel north. And see, Africans got caught because there was two sides to the worm glaciation. There were 4 glaciations that they have accounted for so far. In Europe, you have the Gunz, Gunz, that goes back about 1.75 million years ago. And then you have, that's the Gunz, and then you have the Mindel, and then you have the Riss, and then about 60,000, you have the worm glaciation. Okay, now, somewhere in this time, Africans left Africa and they migrated into this northern climate during what's called the interstadial. It was a warming trend. It was a climate change. Just like we're experiencing now, that's what was going on then. It was a warming trend in the northern area. So Africans moved in, and for thousands of years, they lived there. It went through its seasons. It had its warm weather like Europe has now. But basically, the 51st parallel will cut Ireland in half. It cuts England in half. It goes through Netherlands, and it's just a cap across the entire globe of the of America. It goes across to Asia, okay, and it comes to North America. And so when Africans went into this area, pigmented, nappy hair, wide nose, thick lip, what they didn't realize that from Greenland, there was going to be a part 2 to the worm glaciation. And what happens is that glaciations, ice ages happen underground. They don't happen above ground. They happen underground. And what happens is that they will go forward from and all ice ages emanate from Greenland. That's up in the north. And what happens is that it fanned out across the northern cap of the Earth.
Right. So just for our viewers, he's talking about, you said Greenland is in the northwest, is in northwest hemisphere up near Canada. So it starts there and goes all the way across Canada, Alaska, northern Russia, around.
It fans out.
Yeah.
It fans out across a globe. It's like if you put water on your head and it just dripped to your, the entire top of your head. Okay, so when the ice age hit, the ice came, but it fanned out in all directions. And it brought degrees such as 2,000 to, I'm sorry, my bad, 200 to 400 degrees below zero. And then these Africans were caught because if you look at a map, you'll see that there's mountains across the Caucasus Mountains, the Himalaya Mountains, the Pyrenees, across that northern part, you got mountains. So Africans were locked into the northern hemisphere. They could not get out because these mountains became ice mountains. And because they were caught, they had to do 2 things. And those 2 things, same thing we do when it gets to be November, December. And we had our tank top on and our bathing suit, and we had short sleeve shirts and shorts on. But when it gets cold,
September,
we put
October,
clothes on.
It's time. Button up.
Okay. And along with putting on clothes, we stay in the house more. So we went into caves and we had more clothes. Now, more clothes and being in caves took us away from the sun. And so the little bit of sunlight that could come through, let me stop here for a minute. Since we're going through this route, I want to just stick a pin right where I just said right now. And I'd like to now take you to your skin. Epidermis, very thin layer on top of your skin, and then you have the dermis. In your epidermis, you have 5 strata or 5 layers. The top layer is called the stratum means layer. You have the stratum corneum, and then comes the stratum luciderm, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosa, and stratum basale. 5 layers in your epidermis. In your top layers, you see, everybody say that you need to take vitamin D. But what people don't tell you is that there's 4 types of vitamin D. The kind of vitamin D that our body needs is vitamin D3.
Yeah.
Okay, when you go to a health food store and you ask for vitamin D, look at the label. You'll see it always says D3. When we say you need vitamin D, we get the impression there's only one type of vitamin D, and that's not true. However, in the bottom 2 layers, in the stratum spinosum and the stratum basale, you have a biochemical that is called 7-dehydrocholesterol. The number 7, I'm a teacher, fam, so I got to spell.
Hey, I'm with you.
7.
I'm a student. I'm with you.
Because for people that want to do research, because Brother Hakeem, folk come at you and they want you to believe them. When they're talking to you, when they're teaching you, they're coming at you from the perspective they want you to believe them. I'm coming from the perspective, I don't want you to believe a word I say. I just want to make you think.
Yeah.
And I'll give you the information where I got my information from for you to research. But I don't want you to believe me. I know what I'm talking about, but I don't want you just to accept it because I said it. I want you to wonder. Let me get deeper into this. 7, the number 7, DEHYDROCHOLESTEROL. 7-dehydrocholesterol, biochemical in the bottom 2 layers of your skin. When sunlight comes down, the light, heat, and sound energy comes down and hits your skin. The light, heat, and sound energy is drawn in, and it transports vitamin D1 and D2 into your bottom 2 layers. The action of the light, heat, and sound energy in mixture and with meeting 7-dehydrocholesterol transforms D1, D2 inactive into active D3, D4. That's the vitamin D that your body needs for strong bones and bodies. That also allows your body to assimilate calcium. That relationship allows that to happen. Now, when you take that skin and deny its sun, I'm going to go back to where I was before.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I want to explain what's going to happen to your skin, but I'm also going to tell you what happened to your brain.
To your brain.
Your skin, when people say, when you go outside, it's going to take you 2 minutes before you get frostbitten.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when your body is impacted by degrees between 200 and 400 degrees below zero, it paralyzed the production of melanin in your skin because of the transformation that your skin has to go through to warm itself up to be able to make up for the heat that you're not getting.
Shit. Science.
We're talking science here.
Science, not emotion.
It was a blessing that we could depigment ourselves. Because if we could not depigment ourselves, we would have all died out of osteoporosis in the elder and rickets in the younger. This is just science. You ain't going to survive in the cold unless your body adapts to its surroundings. That's why when it gets cold in New York, we all lose pigmentation.
Yeah.
So that the little bit of sunlight that we may get that brings light, heat, and sound energy, sun, but not the light, heat, and sound energy, we depigment ourselves specifically to be able to get that. And so what happens in the brain, when the brain, it's an organ and a gland, just like the skin, it's going to be impacted like the skin was. It's going to get frostbitten, but here's what happens. When you take a grape, a plump, juicy grape, and you put it in the sun, the liquid is drawn out and the grape becomes a raisin. In the brain, you have a gland that secretes melatonin and serotonin. It's in your limbic system, which is your middle brain. It's called your pineal gland. And it's called pineal today because it's shaped like a pine, like a grape. Now, when your head is exposed to degrees 200 to 400 degrees below zero, your pineal gland does what the grape does. But instead of being sun-dried, your pineal gland is freeze-dried.
Freeze-dried.
And that creates what's called a calcified pineal gland.
Ooh.
That sucks the very spirit. See, you have three major glands in your limbic system.
Mm-hmm.
Let me step back for a minute. There are three parts to your brain. You have the reptilian brain, or the R complex, which is your brain stem.
Mm-hmm.
You have the limbic system, and then you have the cerebral cortex. Your brain stem is responsible for the protection of the organism. Your limbic system is responsible for your feelings or your emotional growth. And your cerebral cortex, although it's the youngest, it's responsible for your thinking. In your limbic system, you have three major glands. You have the pine.
I have a question. You said it's the youngest.
Yes.
What do you mean youngest? The brain is the brain.
Yeah, well, because the brain was formed in levels. The first brain in the reptilian brain was the brain stem. That's something that we have in common with reptiles. That's the R complex. That's the brain stem. That's the first brain of the mammal life. Okay. Now, over time, growing up out of that brain stem came the limbic system. And then out of the limbic system came the cerebral cortex. It looked like a mushroom. But the first brains in mammal was the R complex. And then from the brain stem grew the limbic system. And then from the limbic system grew the cerebral cortex. And the cerebral cortex is specifically important to us because as human beings, we are the one feature of the mammalian group that was able to creatively think. All animals can think.
Yes.
But they think by nature. Human beings think by free choice, which is the power of negation, which called free will.
Right. So I'm sorry. You said a number of things that sparked ideas in my head.
Yes. Yes.
Like literally, right? Because there's this conversation going on about flat Earth. Not that I want to discuss flat Earth. not. I posted one. I posted one of your videos 2 days ago. It's like 400 comments in that joint.
Oh man. Listen, let me tell you, people are writing manifestos, bro.
Yeah, manifestos, yeah. It's not that I want to talk about flat Earth, but it's
I don't mind, brother. We gotta talk about this hot. Whatever you want to talk about.
Well, that conversation, right? Somebody asked the question, where in the Egyptian pantheon is the sun hurling through space with planets trailing behind it? And I sent him the Memphite theology.
Yeah.
And
I wrote a book about that, Shabaka Stone.
The Shabaka Stone. And the idea of this nebulous, chaotic void out of which Ptah, of which we get the word father. And then that's another conversation I want to have with you about the English language and how you could trace it back to ancient Egypt, Kemet. But there's this idea, as above, so below, God being mind, and all of creation is mental, and we share that in God, the ability to creatively think, to structure, to organize, to put things in place. But through that story, the Memphite creation theology kind of explains that on a micro level and a macro level. And I was hoping that you could kind of go further than what I just did, because I know I didn't go that far. The idea of the universe, physical universe, being a creation of mind, and how man shares that with God. the ability to use mind to create. How that's spelled out in, say, for instance, the Memphite creation theology or other cultures throughout history who've expressed that, and then they become religions. Or they become, okay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that what the Shabaka stone, which is a rewritten version of an older document known as the Memphite theology, tells us that there are two cosmic commandments. The first commandment says to realize that you are the creator having a human experience. The second commandment is to treat the creator's creations as you would treat yourself. Because if you see yourself as a god and you respect all of the creator's creations, you would treat all of the creator's creations, be it botanical or animal or whatever, the creations, rocks, trees, whatever it is, you would treat those things as you would want to be treated yourself, realizing the God within you. So when I see the God in you, Brother Hakeem, I'm looking at the God within me. When I'm looking at the God within me, the way in which I interact with you is how I respect myself. And this is why when I see people getting disrespectful with other people, and they say, wow, he disrespect you or she disrespect. No, she did not disrespect or he did not disrespect you. They disrespected themselves. But they were too much of a coward to disrespect themselves outwardly, so they used you as a projection. Because if you respected yourself, you would not interact with people a certain way. Because you would realize the God within you is the God within them, which our ancestors call the Ka. And so it becomes important as we're developing our psychological understandings. When you look up into the heavens, that is a macrocosm. When you look in the mirror, you're looking at a microcosm. In fact, one atom in our body can be compared to us, to the universe. We are a microcosm. You don't have to look for God out there. You don't even have to look for God in here. I watched God brush his teeth this morning. I watched God wash his face this morning. And another thing, I can't handle the idea that God is a man only. Dr. Ben tells us to have a God, you must have a goddess. And for anyone to perceive a world where your God is telling you, I have created you in my image and likeness, but most of his creations, who are women, don't look like this man, we got a problem, Houston. And so there is a direct correlation between the heavens and the earth. And the first law of the Kabbalion says that the universe is mental. And when you look at the Shabaka stone, it is that spirit within the universe that said, in fact, let me back up. The first thing the universe did was have a thought. And then the thought transformed into a desire. And then desire spoke word. And then word made flesh.
Wait a minute, hold on, back up. Because I'm that desire. That's the piece, the desire to want to do something. The
Yes.
will, the will comes from the desire, When we talk about the will, we talk about the thought. We don't talk about the desire,
Yes.
So I'm sorry.
The thought is born, the desire is born out of the thought. You think about something. I want to come into being, but I am pure spirit. And therefore, I will never know myself. That's the thought. But the desire for the creator of all is I want to know me. Desire. And then the desire created the word, which is the wisdom and the knowledge, and transformed the word into flesh, which first was a thought, then came a desire, then became a word, and then became the actual flesh of it, which started on our earth in the waters. And in the waters, it transformed itself. From the waters, we went through becoming bacteria. Bacteria became plants or botany. Plants or botany became fish. Fish became amphibians. Amphibians became mammals. And then mammals went through their process. The mammal that they believe that humanity came from is called Hadroconium. And in my book, Spirituality Before Religions, brother, I lay all this out from the beginning before I even get into spirituality. And Hadroconium was about the size of the top digit of your pinky. And it was just an entity. And out of that entity came all the other mammals that eventually would become us. It's a beautiful story. It's a phenomenal story. It is more precious and more spiritual to me than the actual stories I hear in religions.
Well, because, with all due respect, God created the world in 6 days. He rested on the seventh. He created Adam and Eve, and then humanity came from Adam and Eve. There was no, right? No? Or is that symbology? That's symbols, archetypes.
It's all symbols. First of all, the number 7. First, I'm dealing with the number 7. And then from all of that, when you think about the evolutionary process, because remember, they started off by saying that God was in the water, the word was in the water, and the word was with God. That's exactly how Shabaka Stone opens up. All things came out of the Nun. And then Nun, which is the water or the universe or hydrogen in science, then in that potential energy at rest.
He said, or hydrogen in science, because, all right, that's another question, but I don't want to stop you, Bill. Sorry. It's hydrogen.
Man, go ahead, brother.
That the 200 and how many elements are there? 206.
Well, we basically count about 106 to 116, but there's
bones.
92.
92.
After 92,
206 bones.
All the other atoms or elements become were created in a laboratory. 92 are there.
In Kemet, they were the deities that we talk about.
That's exactly who they were, and they took on manifestations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Hydrogen was the water. Hydrogen plasma was the waters.
That's the spiritual water. Hydrogen is all around us. Plasma. I encourage us to research plasma physics. The future. Plasma physics. See, Brother Hakeem, we as a people have been put upon emotionally. And I understand that. And we have developed an epigenetic tag through our experience that through intergeneration and transgeneration, we have handed down our experiences to our children. And for so many of us, it was very, very painful. But there was always the concept, as Dr. Maya Angelou says, still we rise. We always met the occasion, no matter what happened to us. And we now sit here, Brother Hakeem Green and Brother KABA HIAWATHA, with a group of brothers and sisters that are watching this program. Still we rise. And we're getting this information to our people. And so the Shabaka stone starts with everything starting in the waters, the abyssal, the endless waters, which is the universe. And at some point in time, there was an eruption. There was something occurred that converted potential energy or energy at rest into energy in motion. And that's Ptah. And Ptah is represented as the hill that rose up out of the waters of Nun. And that's where Jesus will tell you, it is upon you, Peter, that I will build my church. Because Peter comes from the word Ptah, and so does Buddha. And that's the work of Dr. Muata Ashby scholarship. who's very deep into Eastern African philosophies and comparing it to Kemet, Dr. Muata Ashby. Check out his work. This brother's phenomenal. He and his wife done phenomenal work. And so out of this conversion of energy comes the third aspect of the Trinity, because this is the original Trinity. It ain't Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. It's Nun, Ptah, and Atum.
I have something I want to share with you after. It's a piece I'm actually about to put out called Son of God. And it's a rap about what you're saying right now. But I'll share it after later.
And yeah, Brother Hakeem, this is it. And see, we have the DNA. See, what I'm trying to do with our people, what I'm trying to do. Somebody say, what's your agenda? Here's my agenda. I'm trying to tickle the DNA of the pyramid builders in Black folk. I'm trying to open up the world as we saw it before we were so rudely interrupted by Indo-Europeans who knew nothing. And I believe that there were Africans in Africa around 500 BC and even before that were who I call super sapiens. They were human beings that went to the 7th level. They moved beyond Homo sapiens sapiens and became super sapiens. And there were things that, because of their relationship with nature, they were able to interpret. It's right in front of us now. Ain't nothing new.
No.
Nothing was taken away. Nothing was added. But their perception of the world, because they were so deep, you see, and we as an original people, this is the work of Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum. Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum talks about the concept of the original African people were 6-dimensional. Indo-Europeans are 3-dimensional.
Oh, you said 6-dimensional.
Yeah, 6-dimensional.
Nah, I'm 4th dimensional, and I've heard people mention 5th dimension.
Yes.
I've never heard of a 6th dimension or 6-dimensional reality. Anybody discuss that? That's a
first 3 dimensions: length, width, and depth. So to those who might ascribe to flat Earth, you're not even 3-dimensional. You're 2-dimensional.
2-dimensional.
Because you can see length and you can see width, but you can't see depth. Okay. Now, when I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, if you look at me 2-dimensional, I ain't got nothing behind me. I'm flat. I'm a flat person. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you in 2 dimensions. But if you and I were together and we were to circle around each other, I would see your back and you'd see my back. You'd see that I'm a 3-dimensional being. And if you spend your life, that's how you're going to stay for the rest of your life. You better get up out of that 2 dimension, get into 3.
Yeah, see,
because it's only when you.
Yeah. Hello, you there? Did I lose you?
No, man, we're here.
Okay, cool. Because I've heard you say, at the end of the day, and I agree. At the end of the day, what we got to face, flat Earth, spherical Earth, no, never mind. That's not the big discussion we need to have. But then there's another side to that. That's like, there has to be certain agreements that we have. We have to be on the same page on certain things. Like there's certain realities we have to share, or we're going to be stuck with a non-reality. And that flat Earth thing it seems like one of those from what you just described, because it's a 2-dimensional reality. It's flat.
Yes.
It's flat. It's not a 3-dimensional reality. When you deal with a spherical Earth, that is the 3rd dimension that you just described, being able to circle around and see depth.
Yes.
Length, width, height, 3 dimensions. And then there's 4, 5, and 6, and you're gonna.
When you can combine and you reach a certain level of bringing together those 3 dimensions, length, width, and depth, You then move into the fourth dimension,
Excuse me.
which is the space-time continuum.
Space-time.
The space-time, have you ever had deja vu?
All the time. All
Okay,
the time.
that's space-time continuum,
Mm.
where the time is history and the space is geography. And when you're in the space-time continuum, not space and time, space-time. Because when you're in the space-time continuum, what deja vu does, check this out. Imagine like you write a book, or let's say you do a rap, right? And jewelry, okay? And let's say you write it out, you perform it, and then you sit back and you watch it. And then all of a sudden you start seeing things. You say, wait a minute, I remember that. I've experienced that before. Yeah, but you did it. Space-time continuum says that your book has already been written. Life is you're living it out and you're reading it.
Mm.
And when you're in the space-time continuum, and this ain't no Twilight Zone thing here.
No.
In the space-time continuum, you can go back to before the beginning began, and you can go to the day after eternity ends, if I can put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you can see the entire spectrum of things. You have the Akashic records. You have tapped into the ability to know all things in all places. That's the fourth dimension. Now, you take that dimension and you enhance and embellish that, you get to the fifth dimension, which means that you're living in the light. Light is the fifth dimension. You're walking in the light. And when you're walking in the light, you are walking in the realization that you are the creator and all things are possible through your relationship with nature. And I'll give you an example of a man that did that. George Washington Carver.
Yeah.
George Washington Carver. You see, here's another thing. When we're dealing with the brain, we talk about how much of our brain that we're using, and they say, well, Albert Einstein used 11% of his brain. Okay. You cannot measure the use of the brain quantitatively, like quantity, like 11% or 20% or 30%. The way in which you judge the usage of the brain is your ability to use both left and right hemispheres of your brain simultaneously. And by that, I mean, if you're right, it's called stereognosis. Stereognosis, which means gnosis.
Stereognosis.
Stereognosis. In other words,
both sides of the brain.
Yes, but if you're right-handed, you use the left side of your brain.
If you're right.
The left side of your brain is where your mathematician and your scientist is, where your analysis is, where your reasoning is. If you're left-handed, they say you are right brain dominant. That's where your musician is. That's where your artist is. Mm-hmm. That is where your creative genius is. Okay? Now, and in the middle, that connects these two hemispheres is something called the corpus callosum. C-O-R-P-U-S, corpus callosum, C-A-L-L-O-S-U-M. And that is the bridge between your two hemispheres. And when you can send information from one side of your brain to the other side of the brain, and then send that information back to the other side, let me explain to you why George Washington Carver was an example of a man that used upwards of, can't even tell you how much of his brain he used, but you got to judge him not
qualitatively.
Exactly.
Quality.
I've done research on this, brother, because of science. Mm-hmm. And what the Indo-European did when he came to America is that he found a crop that he could make money on. Mm-hmm. Cotton. Mm-hmm. And so he just kept on growing cotton on the land, cotton on the land.
And he ruined the soil.
And he ruined the soil. He killed the soil.
He killed the soil.
There's something known as photovoltaics, mm-hmm. where the light, heat, and sound energy that comes down to the earth, it enriches mm-hmm. the earth. For instance, indigenous people had what they call the three sisters: bean, squash, and corn. When they grew let's just take it beans. It was the bean season where they cared and cultivated for the bean. That cultivation enriched the earth so that when it was time to grow squash, the squash was born into very fertile.
Yeah. It had nutrients to pull from.
Exactly. Because the light, heated sound energy and the beans created that richness, photovoltaics, light from electricity, that then brought the squash in. And then the cultivation of the squash brought the corn to that. And there was a cycle. You didn't grow the same crop all the time, but the earth wasn't the same thing all the time.
You got to diversify it.
Exactly. So when the European came and saw he could make money, called the cash crop, he grew cotton. When George Washington Carver saw the earth was dead, he started to plant soy and peanuts and other types of sweet potato that enriched the soil back and saved this country. He saved it.
All right. People got to understand, this is the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Give or take, I would say middle 1800s to middle 1900s.
1900s. Right. And you're talking about a black man who's responsible for saving this nation's economy, this nation's way of life. This is before the United States of America is a power globally. This is way before the United States. If it wasn't for this black man, along with a whole bunch of other of our people, this country does not, and that's another discussion. But back to George Washington Carver.
But let me add one more thing to you just said, since you brought the point out there, Brother Hakeem, is that in the 40s, 1940s, during World War II, the rubber plantations in the world were being controlled by the Axis powers, by the enemies. And that created a problem. Because with the advent of Jeeps and cars and planes, which had been in process maybe 30, 40 years from that date, Henry Ford contracted George Washington Carver the money to produce rubber and concrete artificially. That's why where people work, they're called plants.
Because he studied the plant. He talked to the plants.
And what we're on, you put an E between the N and the T, becomes planets. See, everything is in front of us. But when ignorant people don't know what they're talking about and they try to take your attention away from stuff.
And the root of it all, of that word, is plan.
Yes. And foresight. Future. Okay. But now let me tell you what George Washington Carver did. In terms of saving the earth by what he did with plants, he saved the earth because he created artificial rubber and concrete that went into the war effort in World War II that allowed America and the Allies to win. And that is who is the greatest individual in the world, is George Washington Carver, was the greatest scientist of the 20th century. But let me tell you one other thing that he did. He was a phenomenal painter. And he used to draw plants. Remember what I told you about the two sides of the brain? See, the scientist in him saved the planet, United States, as it relates to what he did with soy and what he did to the land. That was his left brain. But look at his right brain. He was an artist. He was a phenomenal artist that drew plants. I mean, he literally drew plants. You'll see pictures of his plants. That was the right side of his brain. And what allowed him to do what he did was the fact that he was able to take the left side of his brain and the right side of the brain and bring them both together in harmony through the corpus callosum to be able to become the dynamic brother who turned down hundreds, if not millions of dollars in order to remain at Tuskegee Institute, living on the second floor on campus, teaching Black children their history, their culture, and their science, and he always had a carnation in his jacket hole. That's why I say George Washington Carver, because he was able to master both sides of his brain. Now, how can we do this? Okay, so I practice this with my children, you know, in school, my own children, but my children in school, I practice this. I say, if you are right-handed, start to write with your left hand. If you find that you carry most bags in your right hand, start to carry them in your left hand. Whatever dominant side you are, begin to use your other side, because remember stereognosis. Okay, it is the crossing over of your actions to your thoughts. Now let's go back to what we said originally, that all things start with a thought, that then become a desire, that then become the word, that then becomes the flesh. The word made flesh. You manifest your destiny. And George Washington Carver could walk away from money. If George Washington Carver had done what people would do today, he would own the health food industry because of all that soy that they got.
Yeah. Crayola
crayon. This brother was the first human to bring back the color lapis lazuli from ancient Egypt. Crayola crayons, all the colors that we have in our clothes. Thank George Washington Carver.
Wow. Wow.
He diversified the coloring impact.
Wow. Yeah, I gotta be honest with you. I'm embarrassed and ashamed that I don't know more about George Washington Carver other than peanut butter.
Peanut.
And of course, in him, you know, the factory plant. I didn't know that, his relationship to Ford, but the other, you know, creations that are, I was not aware.
Google his name, you'll see it.
Oh,
there's
for sure.
pictures of him in the science lab, and there's pictures of him in front of his easel drawing. He used both sides of his brain. That is how you judge the amount that a person uses, qualitatively, not quantitatively. But you see, the Indo-European mind and the pineal gland, because it's been calcified, can only deal with the 3 dimensions. They cannot deal outside of the 3 dimensions, because at that point you have to take them into time and space, and they ain't been around all time and space. They came out of us. They had a beginning, and they have an end.
They have an end. Yeah.
We don't. We are cosmic beings.
Yeah. Now, to take it back to the beginning, and I want to bridge over to another subject. Well, one is that creation mythology in relationship to the brain, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland. You know, I've you know, read in places that the way the brain functions is like the heavens. There are 12 divisions. The pineal gland, pituitary, with 2 other glands form a cross. The chrism, or the oil that's secreted by the pineal gland,
yes.
and what that does to us. And you know, the idea of thought creation, that taking place in the brain, and then, you know, language, and going from, you know, thought to the word, and the creation of language, and how, you know, there's so many original words, sounds, vibrations that we still use today.
All came from nature. Nature was our first teacher. When we looked up, we saw a bird, and as the bird flew over, the sound of the wings, that's what it sounded like. So they called the bird Heru. There was another bird that they heard always going, "Ak, ak, ak." So they gave it the letter A, and that's the vulture. Nature taught us. Who could have taught us? We didn't have schools. And the first, and this is why rap is so important, the body motion got into it. You see, a lot of us, when we talk, we demonstrate what we're talking about. You know, you could be standing across the street from a brother and sister or two sisters or black folk talking across the street. You might not know exactly what they're talking about, but you know the mood of the conversation.
yeah, right.
You know, because of the way we're doing what we do.
Mm-hmm.
But the calcification of the pineal gland can let you stand still and you just talk. But melanin in us, you know, we got flavor, you know, we got to do stuff. And so, you know, like Ebonics is called African American Vernacular Language. It is a language. It's a very good language, by the way, also. Because I say to you, yo, Bra Hakeem, I'll be going to the movies. Okay. You automatically pick up, okay, he goes to the movies.
Often.
Yeah. Suppose I said to you, yo, Bra Hakeem, I be going to the movies. That means more often than I be going. And then if I say to you, I be going to the movies.
Yeah.
That's more than if I said, I be going to the movies. You see, our body begins to express verb tense. See, they got to create a lot of words. You know something, Brother Hakeem? I go to the movies all the time. See, we don't want that. We say, yo, I be going to the movies. And that means the same thing as if I added all those words in there. And to us, time is the most precious thing you have. So when you spend more time trying to explain what you got to say, you're wasting time.
You're wasting time.
I be going is a perfectly structured phrase. Now we're ashamed of that. We say, oh, that's slave talk. No, that's not slave talk. That's ingenious. Because we took a language we had no idea. Well, nobody's bringing us to school to teach us English. They just said, do this, do that, and beat you if you didn't. That's how they talk to you.
Trauma-based education.
That's it. Trauma. We still have trauma-based education. The fact that you take a test is trauma-based.
It's trauma.
Because, you know, in Africa, Africa's a continent now, so I don't want to get caught up in just speaking so openly. In the cultures that I've studied, when you took a test, what you got wrong wasn't important. Let me say that again, because I need to rephrase it. You take a test of 10 questions today in schools in New York. You get 8 right, 2 wrong. People focus, oh, wow, he got 80. If somebody got 100, all of them right, their paper go on top. If you got 90, it go there. 80, go there. If you didn't pass the test, it don't even go up on the board. So you're invisible in that classroom. And they say you failed. But from an African perspective, the 8 that you got right wasn't important. It was the 2 that you didn't get right that was important, because now you know what you got to study. So next time you take the test, you get them all right. So the idea of taking a test was never to measure your intelligence. It was to improve your intelligence. And there was nothing wrong with not getting it right. What was wrong is if you took the test again and got it wrong again. Like I tell people all the time, Dr. Ben gave me permission to say, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know the answer. You don't have to know everything. And I used to tell my children that, you know, when I would teach them, I separate my biological children from my children in the classroom, because what I do with my biological children was totally African based. I couldn't even explain to you the difference between the 2 educational processes, because I have to follow a certain pattern in the Board of Education. But the key is to understand that if a child asks me a question I didn't know the answer to, I say, I don't know the answer to that. I said, but now that you've brought that to my attention, I'm gonna find out. And tomorrow, when we get back in school, I want you to research your question too. And tomorrow, when I come back, I'm gonna have an answer for you. Will you have an answer for me? They say, yeah. And normally they did. That engagement between teacher and student was very positive because, for one thing, I allowed students to know that I'm an adult and I'm your teacher, but there are things I don't know.
Yeah.
But once I know I don't know it,
Mm-hmm.
it is mandatory that I find out.
Mm-hmm.
That's the lesson I was trying to teach them. I don't have to know everything. And people say, wow, I'm surprised that you didn't know that. I say, why are you surprised? I'm surprised that you're surprised.
You can't know everything.
No, and you don't have to. And please don't put that pressure on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, in terms of, the word into the written script, I've heard you discuss just the script in ancient Egypt in Kemet. It wasn't just hieroglyphic. There were different forms of script that then would get borrowed and changed into other things like Hebrew, and the idea that some of that ended up in the English language. Like for I don't know how factual this is, but there's even the word Heru is hero, is hour, in terms of its relationship, the sun to time, Heru being symbolized with the word hour, also hero. I don't know how true that is, but
It's very valuable because there is a relationship. Just like Ma'at, the relationship to mathematics.
Mathematics.
Ma'atikos. It's the double Ma'atian feathers. It's the equation of harmony. And so what you're dealing with in language is the idea that sounds is what makes language. For instance, the owl is the symbol for the sound M. You might wonder, well, why would an owl be a symbol for the letter or the sound M? But when you make that sound, it's the only letter, it's the only sound we make where our mouth must be closed. And when your mouth is closed and you make that sound, it vibrates an area right behind your olfactory bulb in your brain. That area in Kemet, they built a temple, and in the temple, they built a room dedicated to that part of your brain. It's called the Shittite Infant, SHTYTNTFND. This Shittite Infant is also called the sacred sanctuary. It's where all of your senses meet. Now, keep in mind, you have 6 senses. You don't have 5, because thinking is a sense. What you think, what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you feel. 6 senses. In that part, in the Shittite Infant, when you make that sound, you vibrate that. And sitting in that area is deep melanin and cerebrospinal fluid. And that's why you have the sound when you're meditating. And when something tastes good, what do you do, Brother Hakeem? When you get a good idea, what do you say? Okay. And when something don't sound right, you say, okay. And so the owl represents that because the owl represents something in nature. Now, the wise, I remember when I was growing up, man, they had wise potato chips where it was the owl. Now they just got the eye, but it used to be an owl, right? And then when you graduate, everybody always has like the owl with a cap and gown. Okay, so the owl came to represent intelligence. But the owl ain't the most intelligent bird. But there's 2 characteristics that the owl has. It's a nocturnal animal and it can see in the dark. But it also can turn its head around 359.9 degrees.
Not all the way.
Not quite all the way. It snaps back.
Mm.
There's always something you can learn.
Yeah.
And so what our ancestors did was they took the characteristics of the owl. Because to be able to see in the dark means you can see truth in a lie. And to be able to see 359.9 means that you can see all angles of things. So the conclusions you come to are holistic and intelligent. So the owl became a symbol for intelligence because of what we do when we go, and when grandma ain't feeling good, and maybe grandbaby's giving her some trouble, what does she do? She sits in the rocking chair, and what does she do? She hums, "Precious Lord, take my hand. Lead me on." But she hums. Even the word hum, you have to hum.
Yeah.
And so those sounds, and that's why the letter N, which is the waters, because out of the thought of intelligence comes the waters, which is the symbol for the letter N. And in the symbol for the letter N, you now go from you have a nasal sound. So now you're taking that movement up through your shittite, through that point where you are now you're moving that sound up to the sound that takes you to higher consciousness. That's what percolates the brain to higher levels of consciousness. That's probably what our brother Dr. George Washington Carver did. In order, he used to go out there and hum to the plants, and then come back and plant them, draw them, and then come with different experiments. Brother went out into the woods for 7 days, came back with 52 inventions, and they asked him, "How did you learn that?" He said, "The plants told me." And everybody laughed, because in a three-dimensional mind like the Indo-European, when you say that they talk to you, you get the impression that there's a conversation going on. And so when you have a plant and a human, where the human said the plant talked to me, and you know the plant can't talk, you go off into a rabbit hole because you don't understand. So you want to make that person seem crazy because you just don't understand. But when George Washington Carver said the plants talked to him, they did talk to him. They talked to him through what he saw and what he felt, what he thought, what he smelled. All of those was a way that they communicate. You see, we get the impression talking means that you talk. But now we got Braille, we have sign language, we have smoke signals, we have the Yoruban talk. We're talking about communication. We're not talking about talking like the tongue. We have body language. There's more ways to communicate. Even the way the plant would blow in the wind spoke about the heaviness of it or the lightness of it, the colors that it looked like, told them how it could help. The fruits that came from it told them how it could help. Nature taught George Washington Carver like nature taught the Twa Mbuti language. Let me just add one more thing, brother, because I want to close this door. Sixth dimension.
Yeah.
We got up to 5. We got the 5th one was light. The 4th one was time, space, continuum. The 6th one is your footsteps in the cosmos. It's called gravity, where centripetal force marries centrifugal force.
Okay, now we're back to spherical Earth flat Earth conversation.
You can't escape it.
Okay, can you go into depth about centrifugal and centripetal forces?
Centrifugal force is a force that originates inside and pushes out, but it still pulls in, like the sun threw the planets off, but made them constantly rotate around it. Centripetal force is a force that comes from the outside and pushes in, but pulls out. So you have these two dynamic forces. Where they get married is the 6th dimension. And that's what allowed George Washington Carver to leave his footprints amongst us. That's what allowed John Henry Clark and Sheikh Anta Diop, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, Adam Clayton Powell. Okay. That's what allowed them to leave their footprints. When you're dealing, with Nipsey Hussle and the legacy he's left.
Gravity.
That's one of the souls that you have. One of the souls that you have is the memory you leave amongst the organisms on earth. And every time you call their name, this is why libation is important. Every time you call their name, you are not calling them from outside to come in. You're engendering them from within to come out. We are our ancestors. And when all is said and done, we only have one ancestor, the Creator.
Yeah.
Do you know, brother, that and to the audience, if I took you back 400 years, 20 generations, some people say a generation is 20 years, some people say 25, some say 30. I want to keep it neat, so I'm going to say a generation is 20 years.
Okay.
If I took you back 20 generations of 20 years, basically we're dealing with 400 years. We're dealing with the year 1622. The amount of human beings, when you talk about ancestors, physical ancestors on the planet, Brother Hakeem, your physical ancestors, starting in 1622, that would continue. And by the way, this is math. This is called exponential expansion equation. Exponential expansion equation. It's a mathematical formula. You have 2 parents, you have 4 grandparents, you have 8 great-grandparents, you have 16 great-great-grandparents. Now, if I took you back 20 generations, if we counted your ancestors that's in you, it comes to 1,048,476 human beings existed to bring Hakeem Green into existence.
Wow.
So when we think we're alone, and I only took you back 400 years, what happened if I took you back 4 million? How many ancestors do you have in you? And when you get back further enough, you only got one ancestor that we all came from, including Indo-Europeans. And that's the Creator. So when you trace back your ancestry far enough, you ain't even on the earth. You go back far enough, you're in the sun. That's why Africans call themselves children of the sun.
Children of the sun. Yes, sir.
We are not earthlings. We're starlings.
Wow.
And if you go back far enough, the sun was born in the galaxy. The galaxy was born in a cluster. The cluster was born in the supercluster. So if we all went back to our original state, brother, we pure spirit. We just had to get this body because the Creator wanted to know himself. And so she created creations in order to, evolutionary wise, come to a certain point where we are now. And once we got to this point of evolution, the heart's the right size, the brain's the right size, the hand's the right size, the knee is in the right place. Once we get to this perfect evolutionary state, then we stopped evolution and we started involution to search for the Creator within, because that's why we were born. We were born to find the Creator within. And when we do that, we will realize that each and every one of us is the Creator having a human experience.
Simply put.
But so complex, Brother Hakeem. Simple, yet complex. Because if each and every one of us realize that, who the hell would give a shit about a flat or round earth? Who would care? Because when you get up on it, look, man, we've gone through Brother George Floyd. We've gone through Breonna Taylor. We've gone through this one and that one. And I have posted things up. People have a comment. They have a sentence, right? When I put that stuff up on the flat earth, people was writing manifestos, brother.
Yeah.
They were writing theses.
bro.
And you
Big,
know something? Who the hell cares? Let's just say the earth is flat. All right. What's next?
now what? Okay, and then what?
Yeah. Now, okay, it's flat. Now what?
Now what?
You see? But you see, that's distraction.
I,
There are
I,
people that are distracting our people
yes, yes, yes,
because
yes,
they
yes.
understand, fam. If they understood this right here,
Mm-hmm.
if they understood why the 5%ers call themselves gods on earth, come
And,
on. I used to
and
see Father Allah in Harlem.
It's sad, but there's God body who believe
Yeah.
flat Earth is real. I'm like, bruh, your whole math is you God body. You can't believe that. This goes against everything you're saying.
Yeah.
Nah, and it's just the timing of it. It first was introduced to me maybe 7-8 years ago, and when somebody said flat Earth, I thought it was a joke. We talking about flat Earth, and it was like, yeah. And they took me to a website, 200 Reasons Why the Earth is Not Round, and a lot of the stuff in there. I'm horrible at math. I'm stuck on one
No,
side of
you
the
just didn't
brain.
have good teachers.
Yeah, I didn't have the
You're excellent in math. You just didn't have good teachers.
good. Thank you. But there were a number of the points that I'm like, yeah, this is that, that's not right. And but the thing just grows and grows and grows, and so many of my close friends, and they come at me like they just need to have this discussion,
Yes.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, why do we need to have that discussion? We don't agree. Can we just leave it like right there? No, they're hard pressed to prove the earth is flat. And
Yes.
it's like it's so, the biblical narrative, the literal biblical narrative, I know a lot of them use, but for me it really disconnects us from what I think the creator really is, and the vastness, the infiniteness of the creator, and the whole idea of this, the great whirlwind, and what happens out of the whirlwind, and then looking at nature and how things grow, and the hair in our head, and the ocean waves, and the footprint of the spiral is on the earth itself. It's on our fingerprints. It's I don't see how you get around a non-spherical earth. It's just, that's the actual factual. And the spiritual reality, when you talk about the two forces, I'm not even gonna fumble over those two words, but those two forces,
Centrifugal and
it's
centripetal.
thank you, forcing spherical earth, forcing
Yes.
gravity. When you talk about the sixth sense being gravity, the weight, the force that's left by an action or an individual or a movement, or is all tied to as above, so below. What we see in the heavens is what happens on earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for anyone that wants more information on the 6 dimensions, I encourage you to get a book called A Dark Light by brilliant brother Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, Bynum. Because again, family, I'm not coming at you for you to believe this. I just want to make you think.
Yeah.
And when
Well,
the way I explain it, brother.
well, definitely for me, it's not belief, it's knowledge. And so
Yeah,
you didn't say anything about belief here today. You talked about knowledge. Now, whether you agree or disagree is on you.
that's a whole
That's a
that's a
whole
whole
nother,
nother thing.
right. But I've heard nothing but knowledge come
Yes.
from you, elders, and I appreciate your presence here. I don't want to keep you too long. I could go for a long time with you.
Let me say one more thing, brother, if I may.
Yes, sir.
The way I explain it, I use basketball.
Hmm.
Okay. And what I say to people is, okay, I take a garbage can and I put it a distance real close, but not that close. And then I take a piece of paper and I say, okay, throw that in the garbage can. And they'll throw it. But in throwing it, it waves, it goes down and goes away. Here's centrifugal force. Here's centripetal force. Now, what I'm saying,
Ooh.
okay,
You know what I mean?
now throw it.
Now throw it.
And it is this impact that creates the movement. When you bundle something up and you make it spherical,
Mm-hmm.
In interstellar space, it allows it to move.
Wow.
And it
It's what,
allows it, like the planets do.
or like
And
or like a baseball does when it curves.
that's exactly what it is. A golf, look at the balls. Look at what they do. Circular things are able to move. Look at the wheel, although it's a flat wheel. But still, the idea of a circuitous movement
Yes.
allows things to move over a physical plane.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just the science. But you know what I think is, I think that Western civilization, because brother, let me tell you,
Mm.
Western civilization, Indo-European civilization has never maintained a civilization more than 500 years. When you look at when the Persians, the Iranians, the ancient Iranians, invaded Kush in 525 BC, by 332, the Greeks were there. So from 525 to 332, that give or take, I believe my math is right, is about a little over 180 years. The Greeks coming in 332, and by 30 BC, the Romans done got in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little over 300 years. Some people say the Roman Empire lasted until the 500s, but my history says that they were already falling apart in the 300s. But I'll give them to 400.
Can I put this? Can I put this question out there?
Sure.
This is the Roman Empire.
This is the Oman Empire.
Ooh,
But the Roman Empire fell.
Said the Omen Empire.
Yeah, this is the Oman Empire.
Wait, what do you mean by that? The Omen Empire.
This is the last time around now. This is their last time. They've been around long enough. And now, and again, on Friday, if people go to my website, KABAKAMENE.com, KABAKAMENE.com, www, you can register for my webinar on Friday, which is titled The Origin and Development of the Caucasoid. Because I'm going to take you through something to help us understand exactly what is happening scientifically. As a ethnic, see, Europeans and Asians are not a race. They're an ethnic stock. They're a mutation out of the original race, which is the human race that was born, nurtured, sustained, educated, civilized, and technologized in Africa. And when Africa got their show together, Africans took their show on the road and people the planet. And they brought civilization to all parts of the earth. And so when we understand this concept, then we understand that the Romans, I see them falling apart, but let's give them to 400. Okay, if they went in 30 BC, then and 400, now you got 430 years the Roman Empire existed, then it fell. And then Europe went into dark ages. And then Africans in 711 went into Europe and brought civilization back to them. For 770 odd years, if not more, from 711 to 1492, Africans ruled the world. And then in 1492, okay, I need to stick a pin and say one thing. My brother, everywhere that I see them overcoming us, they have never been able to come into us and overcome and beat us. They always take advantage of the fact that we're fighting amongst ourselves. And Boabdil, the last great king or leader of Granada in Spain, was fighting with his family. And that allowed Aragon and Castile, Isabella and Ferdinand to come in and defeat him because we as Black people were fighting amongst ourselves. Everywhere that I see our fall, our losing, we're fighting amongst ourselves. We're arguing amongst ourselves over superficial. We shouldn't even be talking like that. That's the reality. However, let me go back and then we're going to wrap this up because I want us to understand the old kingdom of Kush Kemet existed for over 2,100 years. The kingdom of Ethiopia existed for thousands of years. In West Africa, Central Africa, South Africa, the Monomotapa Empire, those civilizations lasted for thousands of years, yet Indo-Europeans can't even get past 500 years. This civilization is falling as we speak. We are the ones that have been tapped by the Creator to save the planet. Because we have the DNA of the pyramid builders. We have the DNA of the plantation dwellers. We have the DNA of those of us who grew up in a project, but we also have the DNA of those who will inherit the promised land. But we got to keep on keeping on, family. And number one, we got to stop fighting amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
We can disagree and not be disagreeable. We can be united and not have unity. I don't care if you think like me. I work with people who can't stand me. And I can't stand them. But the issue is not how I feel about you and you feel about me. The issue is what is good for our people. And if you are in a place in the world where you bring great benefit to our people, I am with you. It don't make me a difference how much I may not care for you personally. And I have worked with people that we do not care for each other. And we are on our P's and Q's when we're around each other. But we have gotten the job done. And for that, I've always respected them. I'd like to tell you I started liking them. No, I didn't. I'd like to tell you that maybe they sort of kind of like me. But we got the job done. And that's all I care about. What is good for our people and what is good for the children who are yet to be born. Not just the children we have now. Not just the next generation. Where do we want our people to be in the year 2122? Family, if I may just let you know where my information is.
Oh, yes.
My website, www.kabakamene.com, KABA Thank you, brother. My Instagram is at KABA Kamene. I use my Instagram as I call it the meeting at the African Square. It's my community bulletin board where I talk about what I'm doing next and the things I'm doing. And if you're interested in my books, I have 3 books up on Amazon. Professor William Leo Hansberry, architect of African Studies program, Spirituality Before Religions, and then my 3rd and final book is Shabaka Stone. I'm working on my 4th book right now. It's called Carbon Before Melanin. Because I've been going to I've gone to Dr. Sebi since 1988. Really? I'm now going with going to his wife, Sister Dr. Ma'an.
Amazing.
But I've been going to Dr. Sebi since 1988. And Dr. Sebi knew I used to always talk about melanin. And he used to always say, at the time, my name was Booker T. He said, Booker T, you're always talking about melanin. You need to talk about carbon because carbon came before melanin. So the name of my 4th book is titled Carbon Before Melanin.
Bless. Yes. Man, oh man, this has been an awesome interview. Thank you.
Jewelry, brother.
Jewelry. Now, I wanted to share something with you right fast.
Please, brother.
So it's a piece I got called Son of God. Out the waters of noon, Ptah saw himself. He said, let there be light and set Ra upon himself. Ptah's like the father who creatively commands. He's the architect of plans. Ra is the ram. Atum is the egg with thought we were led. The whole world created from the word that he said. Everything is mental. They say mind over matter, as above, so below, to climb Jacob's ladder. You got to keep it moving. Nothing stays at rest. All things vibrate up and down, right and left. The principle of rhythm is how everything flows. Every cause has an effect. That's how it goes. Then we get to gender. It exists on every plane, masculine and feminine, woman and man. The womb of the universe where we find the I am, H to the AK, I am.
Yeah. Hey. Oh, from the opening bars, brother, you had
bars. But the jewelry was being dropped all through this segment. So as you're educating, I'm referring back to this rhyme to make sure my rhymes is right.
Oh man.
I had to give the actual factual, and the second verse, just talks about the Trinity, man, woman, child,
Okay.
and respect to the woman, because without the woman, my mother Mary, hey, that's what it is. But we have KABA HIAWATHA Kamene. Did I pronounce that right? I don't want to butcher your name.
Well, I say Kamene, but that's fine.
Kamene. Now I want to get it right. I want to
Yeah,
get it
Kamene.
right. The elder, the OG, jewelry galore. Please follow him on all his social media. It'll be well worth your while. My name is Hakeem Green. This is Madison TV. All we do is spark mad wisdom. We out. Peace.